In 2012, a global hack saw the world being asked one simple question. This question would resonate in the smallest of blogs to the biggest of government offices. It was a question that could be answered by only one person. He was a private eye living in London, and his name was Sherlock Holmes. This month, on Fantastic Histories, we look at the lineage of this consulting detective and manage to trace his origins all the way back to the 1800s. My name's John Noonan.
My name's Leslie Morris.
And today on Fantastic Histories, we're going to be looking at we're going to start off a rare phenomenon that happened in London back in the distant past of 2012. What appeared to be happening was there was a hacking in London. Really strange. It happened to me. iPhones, your GPS signals on your car, if you see those ones, television sets, monitors, everyone saw the same thing.
But aren't you from Manchester?
I am from Manchester, but this went everywhere. This was global. Well,
okay.
I think it was global. I mean, bear with me. Let me tell you what it was, and you can tell me.
I just thought we should slag off Londoners. That's why I interrupted.
Okay, let's get that out of the way. Screw London, Manchester for the win. Leslie, you want to give a shout out to any Australian cities?
Melbourne?
Yeah, Melbourne. Ooh, go Melbourne.
The rest is irrelevant.
Isn't that what every poll dictates ever?
Yeah, pretty
much. But yeah, it was a really strange phenomenon. Basically, whatever electronic device you had, if it had a Wi-Fi signal or Bluetooth or whatever, you were met with this sort of, what was clearly a photo of an attractive, well-dressed man, slick back hair.
Yeah.
His visage was crudely animated. It's kind of like South Park, you know, that sort of like jabby jabby jabber. And all he was doing was saying the same four words over and over again. Did you miss me? Just that. Did you miss me? Did you miss me? Did you miss me? It was like the horrible Crazy Frog ringtone in terms of annoyance.
Because its origin wasn't in Manchester. If it was only in Manchester, I would have suspected it was some kind of arts project.
Well, exactly.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people would have suspected that as well. But the fact that it took over like Piccadilly Circus, because you know how you have all these big sort of fantastic Samsung signs, gone, just replaced with a crudely animated image of a man saying, did you miss me? And I'm presuming, Leslie, that it didn't get as far as Australia then. It was just isolated to the UK. Were you walking around Federation Square and going, oh, what are the hipsters up to now?
There's so much stuff that goes on I just willfully ignore.
But that's the thing, is because it made it London, of course, as it has this knock-on effect. It goes all across the UK. Occasionally, I know CNN reported on it, and various other ABC News. And the thing is, obviously, that meant the internet the internet always pays attention to this kind of thing. And a lot of people were comparing it to a kind of infamous incident in 1987 when there was a man dressed as Max Headroom. Do you remember? Yeah. Dressed up and managed to hack into a Chicago television center during the course of Doctor Who.
Yeah.
So for those who don't know it, you can find the clip on YouTube. And basically, he managed to interrupt two broadcast television stations within the course of 3 hours. The first incident took place just 25 seconds during a sportscast at 9 p.m. on the WGN-TV Channel 9. And the second, 2 hours later, roughly around about 11 o'clock, on WTTW Channel 11. And it lasted about 90 seconds. I can't find any information on the first one, but the second one seems to gained a bit more traction. It lasted 90 seconds. It was pre-recorded on videotape, so they were prepared for this. And it featured this man dressed as Max Headroom with this horrendous, horrible spitting image. Mean anything to Australians? I don't mean some to the UK. And he was just began parodying the WGN channel and television in general. Yeah. He had a moving background. It was really hard to hear, but the hacker was rambling on about Max Headroom's endorsement of Coca-Cola. The series Clutch Cargo, and, and also he aimed his sights at the WGN anchor Chuck Swirsky.
Chuckers,
yeah, all Chuckers. So Coca-Cola, Chuckers, and Clutch Cargo. Ooh, alliteration. Coke, Clutch,
Jeez,
Chuck.
This guy's a fucking nerd.
It's really strange. As he's finishing off, he pretended to defecate, as one person quoted, as a masterpiece for all the greatest world newspaper nerds. So, yeah. The video then ended with the hacker exposing his buttocks and being spanked with a fly swatter by an accomplice before normal programming resumed. So, slightly more in depth than the one that made it to Piccadilly Circus, but still managed to have the same resonance. And what makes them both interesting is the fact that they both made headlines because of the fact they interrupted, and yet the people responsible have never been identified. But like, what now? We're 6 years on. No one really knows anything. No one knows who Max Headroom is. No one knows what's going on with this chap in the animation. However, as I said, the internet does take notice, and if you can go to the right places, you'll find people. What? The internet?
Is this going to be some Pizzagate horseshit? is that where you're going, John?
It's not Pizzagate. No, it's not.
It sounds like it.
There is the suggestion that the picture was a gangland criminal.
Okay.
Potential terrorist / weapons dealer, and asking for a request of clemency. And if you dig further, you'll find someone who claims that the man was also a prisoner of His Majesty's government. Oh, yeah, that's right. Okay, slightly Pizzagate. Leave me alone.
He was an arms dealer.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, arms dealer. The thing is that this is again, we are going on the basis of the internet. We return to the man who supposedly organized the arrest. I struggled to find anything. Descriptions that I could find on this is the man who made the arrest, is that he had no ambitions of any kind, but remains the most indispensable man in the country, and that he made himself essential.
Was he a politician?
Well, yeah, that's what they're saying here. The politician, government, it's all sort of redacted. I mean, look, it's all that kind of stuff. You find a PDF. It goes back to what we were talking about, the Necronomicon last time. You remember? Someone finds a PDF, we go from there. I found there's a really interesting quote. He is indeed an employee. He works for the British government and not in or as part of the British government, even if sometimes he is the British government, which is just this, which is kind of up there with, I can't confirm nor deny that question, So, yeah, you've jumped ahead of me. Basically, I have nothing on this man. It's like he doesn't want to be found. It's
not
crazy.
on Facebook? Have you checked Facebook?
I found Facebook groups. That's where I found these quotes from. But what is strange is, despite the fact we couldn't find the name of the man in the video or the man who supposedly called for the arrest of this man, what we do find when you sift through the dirt is the name Sherlock Holmes. If that means anything to you at all in Australia. No. Well, you see, if you kept an eye on the British tabloids, particularly between 2010 up until 2012, amongst the tales of teenagers getting lost in the woods, slush-o adverts, and write-ups about footballers crashing their helicopters, you'll find articles about Sherlock Holmes, a bizarrely monikered private detective who came to prominence because of a blog by his own housemate, John Watson.
Okay, I was confused. I thought it was some kind of brand. No one has a normal name anymore.
No. There's D-Dog and Word Up. Yeah, I mean, my name's not really John.
Yeah, and it's a little bit racist. It's almost Sherlock.
Yeah, well, yeah. Exactly. But yeah, no, his housemate, John H. Watson, who was, and you can actually check it out on www.johnhwatson.co.uk. So you'll know I'm not making, this is genuine blog. He describes himself as a medical man back from Afghanistan. Apparently, the blog, which started off as a mindfulness tool to cope with PTSD after fighting in the war, detailed numerous cases that apparently that Sherlock was involved in, and the pair of them will work on together, because that seems really logical, doesn't it? Cause we talk about how the British government, can't fund NHS, so of course naturally you're like, well, I could be a GP, or I can go solve crime with my housemate.
Yeah, like the British, if anything, love order and routine.
We love order and routine, sir. That's what made us here. That's why we conquered places. That's what we did.
Yeah.
The Romans built the roads and we improved them. That's what happened.
So, fobbing off being a doctor to be a private investigator.
I do it.
Well, that's why you live in Australia. You've broken free of your coding.
Yeah, you can still see it to this day. It stopped roughly around about 2018, 1st of February. He doesn't update it anymore for whatever reason. And again, if you look on places like My Favorite Murder and places like that, they all have a tendency to take these blogs and dissect it. And that's how I ended up if we go back a bit, how we ended up finding about this government man.
So the mysterious government man isn't Sherlock?
No.
Oh, dude, I'm fucking confused already.
Okay, it's very simple. We have a man who was on a video in Piccadilly Circus who was arrested by a man whose name I cannot give you because I cannot find it.
Okay.
But both of them appear to be connected to a man called Sherlock Holmes, who apparently was working with a GP solving crimes, which were then broadcasted publicly on a blog, GeoCities blog. What is there not to understand?
Okay, geez. I don't know where it's going from here.
Okay, so he was using his blog to detail all these cases, and some of the cases in question have these wonderful, wonderful titles, such as The Geek Interpreter, The Deadly Tea Lights, the Aluminium Crutch, or as you guys would call it in America, aluminum, and my personal favourite, Murder at the Orient Express.
Yeah, okay, that is cool.
This one's good. This one caught my attention. In which Holmes apparently determined that the death of the manager of a Knightsbridge Chinese restaurant was not only an actual murder, but the culprit was literally everybody in the restaurant that night, in staff and customers. So apparently it started off that he'd fired this one staff member. The staff member had gone online, the dangers of going online, kicked off, and everyone else said, oh yeah, we don't like him. We don't like him as well. And then basically they all worked together for one night to all be in the same spot at the same time and kill this guy. And it was only because they claimed to have lots of CCTV footage that Holmes couldn't get access to that he began to suspect that something was amiss. And what I love about it as well is that it sounds really fanciful, but it also sounds like a case from 1934 involving an actress called Linda Arden. But Leslie, we'll get back to that one.
Okay,
we'll do that one another day.
Put
that in the pin. Put it in the pin.
The other cases sound about as exciting as a mystery about a cardboard box.
Exactly. That would be dreadfully boring. No one would write that one. Yeah, pretty popular, getting lots of hits. We're going on my favorite.
But how do you know any of this shit's real? It's a fucking blog.
Well, it's a blog, yes, exactly. But the thing is, this is the point I'm getting to, Leslie. It was a very popular blog, and he was a very popular man. He was making the headlines in the tabloids. There was one that's a great picture of him in a deerstalker hat, just looking miserable.
Okay, it checks out. He is British.
And then one day he threw himself off the roof of the St. Bartholomew Hospital.
Yep.
Yeah. So, sad face in the newspaper, boom.
He didn't follow order and structure. And that's what happens. And
then we pushed them off. Lots of rumours are going around as why he did it. His housemate John refused to be entered into the conversation. And lots of the speculation with the tabloids, again, it's always the tabloids and the Sun, the Daily Mirror, places like that. These are the ones that lauded him and said, oh, it's this fantastic thing, because they were picking up from the blog. Began to speculate.
So like he just had he was an independent private investigator.
Independent private. He would call himself a consulting detective.
It sounds like he was doing a little bit more than buying on cheating husbands.
I think it's one of those things that I think he was doing lots of other things. And I mean, there was an incident of his house being blown up. That kind of made the news. I should really bring that up. Did I not mention that at the beginning? No.
What the fuck is this?
But this is the thing. It's like, this is what's so strange. I mean, it all you try and work out when you try and look into this sort of stuff. It's really hard to dig up the material because everyone sits there and goes, "Oh, he did this, he did that," and then he chucks himself off a hospital roof. But this is where we possibly have the idea of what was going on, because it sounds like a lot of hoo-ha for a man that was just following, as you say, following husbands and wives and getting into incidents over a fake pound note or something like that. But it might be down to a journalist called Kitty Riley. Now, Kitty Riley wrote an article which apparently exposed Sherlock for being a fraud.
Okay.
She claimed that things like the blog prove that this was all just fake, just the attempts to get some notoriety in the same way one does an exercise video or something like that. And the reason why she suggested this was because she had a gentleman called Richard Brooks.
Yep.
Now, Richard Brooks made the assertion that Sherlock had paid him to pretend to be a master criminal known as James Moriarty, which is just the most dumbest name. James Moriarty.
Is he Italian?
Italian, Irish, I don't know. Moriarty. She wrote this article basically where he said, yep, he got paid, he got to pretend to go around and do all this stuff, and it was all part of this big thing where he would he would get captured and blah, blah, he would get like a big pile of money at the end of the day. All a bit scary. But what's interesting is if you look at the picture of Richard Brooks in the article that's in Kitty's article, he looks exactly the same as the man that's being beamed across the Piccadilly Circus.
The only part of this that doesn't feel like it's a viral stunt is because it's a blog.
Yeah.
Like, if it was a set of YouTube videos, you could see how it could connect in its marketing.
Totally.
It could be viral marketing, but fundamentally people don't understand. No one wants to read a fucking blog.
And also, fundamentally, people don't chuck themselves off the roof of hospitals,
Yeah.
That's some crazy ass marketing. But that's the thing, because obviously this sparks off people. People twigged. It was unknown if Richard was, in fact, this Moriarty person he claimed to be, or whether Moriarty was trying to set up Holmes. I mean, we'll never actually know because Richard disappeared.
Is it like, those online? You've got those interactive horror games.
Oh,
ALIs or something like that?
Yes, those are the ones. Yeah,
the Cicada 333. Oh, fucking talking about conspiracy theories.
See, it's hard. Once you get into that rabbit hole, man, you are down on all that stuff. Well, that's the thing. Because this doesn't... Well, what doesn't help is the fact that Richard disappeared.
He fucking did.
He just disappeared. He disappeared roughly around about the same time that Sherlock sort of bounced off the concrete.
Yeah.
I'm being mean about a dead man. I do apologise. Yeah. But is he dead? Because that's the thing. Because now I'm really going to fry your brain, man. Because the point is that... I mean, look, the serious point is the fact that it would appear that from the outside looking in, we've mentioned the fact that he was looking miserable in his photos. The very fact is Sherlock Holmes could have just killed himself because of all the media intrusion. It happens. It's happened before. There's lots of celebrities who've had this issue. And I'd rather not trudge through the tabloid gossip.
You can imagine if he was a guy that was a bit educated and felt a bit isolated from the world, maybe some, substance abuse issues. All of that combining together, the pressure of being caught a fraud. Okay. And maybe if he didn't have the best communication skills. Time after time we see these guys that feel a little bit isolated from the world.
Absolutely.
You could see, in theory, that could all mount up.
And John makes references to the fact that Sherlock was, he referred to him as being a heavy smoker, but I think that might slightly be code for something else. But look, I mean, we're not saying that drugs equals wanting to commit suicide or anything like that.
But if there's a bit of pressure involved, it's...
Oh, if there's a bit of pressure involved, and then you've got the tabloids going, he's a fraud,
Well, it depends on what the drug is. The right kind of drug can calm you down.
Oh, so it was like 7%
Smoking a bit of weed, sure. That's cool. Do a bit of ice, then maybe...
Weed, you're going to probably get to the top of the building and go,
just lay down.
Just look in the sunshine, man. John H. Watson wrote this a few weeks after he passed.
I'm so fucking confused. So who the fuck is this John guy? Is he missing?
No, John's not missing. His blog's not on and not finished. As I say, February 2018 just stops. He was a doctor. He was in Afghanistan. Yeah. The blog itself, he admits to using it as a mindfulness technique. Yeah. Trying to get himself back in the moment. And I suppose that kind of works out if you're coming back from the war.
Yeah.
And you are, for want of a better phrase, desensitized to normality.
Yeah,
because you're going to be, having never been in a high pressure situation like that, I can only imagine what it must be like to be constantly find your life under threat, violence and destruction, and then coming back to London and just going,
why am I spending 12 quid on a sandwich?
Pret a manger.
Why is everything so expensive?
But then you've got people coming up to you and going, before you were trying to remove shrapnel out of a person's head, and then you've got Mrs. Arthur going, oh, I've got the monkeys on me big toe. I mean, of course you're going to want to go off with someone like Sherlock Holmes if his stories are true.
Is there any people who they solve cases for? Have those people been? Because it feels like there just should be a little bit more information, if they're solving crimes. And
I keep going back to this blog because it seems to be the only source of information that seems to be there. It's kind of in the sense that. Aside from these news articles where people have come forward and stuff like that, I seem to recall one woman claiming that she was that she slept with him, that she'd married Sherlock Holmes, and that they were going to retire together in a cottage to do bees. And I'm not entirely sure how true that is. I mean, because that's a bit up there with when people say they've slept with Russell Brand or things like that. So it's that kind of thing. It seems like he captured the imagination, but not many people wanted to come forward. It's almost literally like someone wants to stop you knowing this kind of stuff or that, and it's really strange because the thing is, 2 years after he killed himself, the references come back. The little articles, no more the page 1, it's now the page 7. There is a picture of John Watson getting married to a lady called Mary Morstan, who, you're going to hate me, Leslie, but guess what? Nothing's known about her. It's like she just came out of nowhere. But what we do know about is that she did pass away tragically in an aquarium after being shot.
Oh, fuck.
In an aquarium. I mean that's just trying to one up. That's trying to one up Steve Irwin, surely. It's just this is pure conjecture now from my point of view. But I have to admit, if I was if I was the people in these cases that are getting mentioned on this blog, I'm not sure I'd want to come forward and say, yeah, that was me, unless it was really in my favour.
Yeah, I guess so.
Because you said yourself, we talk about the cheating husband, cheating wife. No one's going to go, yeah, that was me. Yeah, I'm the cheating husband. Yeah, I'm that one. The only way you probably do it is after Kitty's article came out.
Yeah.
And I think people missed an opportunity to do so, because I had a look through like the Daily Mirror website, and there's certainly no people going, yeah, that's right, he said I was a cheater, but I wasn't, because he's a fraud, and now he's a dead fraud.
Yeah, I went on to Maury Povich, and he said I wasn't the father, but Sherlock said I was.
Just because I had sex with the woman, then anyone I've ever had sex with. The fact of the matter is, you have this one person that makes a blog, this spirals, it has a snowball effect that becomes a bit of public interest, which then becomes international interest, it spirals off, people start coming from far and wide. I mean, there was even once, it's supposedly up in down the countryside, he found it. The people talk about the Sherlock being there to investigate something to do with a hound over there. It starts building around after a while, snowballs, and then there's a great phrase by Eddie Izzard when he was describing the death of Princess Diana, and because it happened overnight, we all went to bed, and then we woke up, she was dead. And it's a bit, as he puts it, it's a bit kind of like being a fan of the X-Files, and then finding out they've just released an episode at 2 a.m. when you're all asleep and all the characters are dead, and you wake up and go, I was watching that. And I think that's what happened with Sherlock. Yeah. I think by the time we started building up, it was just like, boom, dead. What? And I think that's why people got frustrated and started going on John's blog and saying things like, oh, well, it's fake, it's clearly fake, whoa, because they want something, you've taken something away from them. And that's why it's interesting that 2 years later, this video comes up of this man that disappeared. And, everyone's like, oh, what's this? And the thing is, there is a picture of John Watson at his wedding in a newspaper, and there's a man next to him who looks suspiciously like the man that apparently is dead.
So when, how many years after that?
So that's like 2 years. 2 or 3 years after the fact. And the blog carries on. But the thing is, it's not making it.
You didn't mention Sherlock had a twin brother.
That's the thing. It's so frustrating. It's like a net made out of cheese that's in the sun. It's pointless. And as I said to you before, he created a blog. He wrote a blog where he was pretty adamant Sherlock is dead. Like, he had actually seen his body, checked his blood pressure, checked his blood pressure. Yeah, you're dead. No, checked his pulse, dead. He's a doctor. He's going to know this kind of thing.
Yeah, I guess so, yeah.
Yeah, of course. You go. And also, thing. That's kind of like day one. Is that dead? Yeah. Well done, you're a doctor.
Yeah. And most doctors don't fuck around with stuff like that.
The thing is, when I started doing some research into this to try and find a bit more, because I was like, I knew, Leslie, you'd be wanting more. You devour it like macaroni.
You're giving me a mystery with no answers.
I don't try to, but what's happened is, what I've discovered is that if there actually are references to other Sherlock Holmes. So, here you go. Sherlock Holmes once investigated the case of Dr. Franz Tobel. Tobel was the inventor of a revolutionary bomb sight that used 3 sonic beams to gain a devastatingly accurate fix on its target. It was wanted by the government. It was wanted by other governments. Everybody wanted a slice of this weapon. Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. Tobel gets kidnapped. Obviously, evidence suggests that maybe someone wants his weapon. Sherlock was able to track down Tobel and the culprit who kidnapped him. Now, you'll love this. Having tracked down the culprit and tracked down Tobel, he wanted to allow himself enough time for the authorities to catch up with him. So he managed to distract the kidnapper long enough for this to happen. And do you know how he did it? By convincing the kidnapper to drain him of his blood drop by drop. 2 words, Leslie, bad and ass, okay? And it worked. The kidnapper was so incensed and was so happy to do this that he allowed him to drip dry in the middle. The authorities turned up, and they managed to get Tobel, managed to get the weapon. They didn't get the culprit, though. As often seems to be in the case, he escaped. And by escaped, I mean he ran and fell down a 60-foot hole and died on impact. And that was in 1942.
What the fuck are you talking about?
This is what I'm saying. This was Sherlock Holmes in 1942 apparently solved the case of a man being kidnapped and then allowing himself to have his blood drained from his body in order to stop him from going along.
No, that's cool, but I literally don't understand what you're saying. So, was it the same Sherlock? How old was Sherlock when he died?
Well, you're missing the point. Sherlock apparently died in 2012, Leslie. This is 1942. Well, there's also an Arthur Sherlock-Holmes. Okay. And in 1970...
Oh, was it his dad?
Possibly.
Okay.
Because Arthur Sherlock Holmes was also a detective in 1977.
It's hard to believe these guys have bred.
Well, Leslie, get ready for this one. This one's a corker. Arthur Sherlock Holmes, emphasising the hyphen there, he was on the trail of a mobster's granddaughter called Francine Mariatti.
What?
Exactly. Now, having lured her into a trap...
They fucking are Italians. This is like a crime family.
See?
It's Godfather shit.
It's amazing. Once you start digging, you need to settle down for this one. You thought the blood dripping was bad. He was on the trail of a mobster's granddaughter called Francine. Having lured her into a trap, much like his 1942 counterpart, he offered Francine an opportunity to kill him as a means to distract her. Having already given her a gun, she followed him up on his task, firing several shots into his chest. Now, little did she realise that Sherlock Holmes had, before this, asked his colleague to fill the gun with blanks.
Classic.
Little did Holmes realise his companion had completely forgotten to do this, and so she basically shot him in front of the public, farting out his rather pathetic little candle. We even have an incident in 1987 of a man claiming, this is FBI, of a man claiming to be Sherlock Holmes. Fine. From the year 1887.
Okay. So the great-great-great-grandfather.
Great-great-grandfather, which is absolute bunkum.
Like all these grandfathers, are they a little bit disappointed they're doing all this cool shit and their fucking emo grandson just jumps off a fucking building? Oh, I'm a bit depressed. These people said a bad thing about my blog.
Yeah, I don't know. Do I want to be known as the man that possibly heroically jumped off a hospital because I didn't want to be, victimized anymore? Or do I want to be the guy that failed to lure someone and got myself shot by my own gun? No, I want to be the guy that drip-dried himself. And
everyone wants to be that one. Yeah.
So this guy in 1987 who claimed to be Sherlock Holmes from 1887, obviously bunkum. And the reason why we know this is because this is where it's all been leading to, Leslie.
Oh, okay, sorry.
I feel...
Will I be less confused about all of this?
Don't even be less confused.
Oh, great.
But I have a fear. We have all these Sherlock Holmes. You mentioned a term before, which I thought was really, really good. It's like a brand.
Okay.
It's like a brand. And so I kind of look for...
brand. No one knows about it. They should have got that fake Max Headroom to promote it.
We don't know that fake Max Headroom wasn't a Sherlock Holmes.
Oh, we don't know.
Max-Headroom Sherlock Holmes.
Yeah.
But because of things like... I mean, look, what I'm saying is, like, if you do the research, there are lots of Sherlock... And possibly, maybe, it is a brand. Yeah. Okay, Arthur Sherlock-Holmes, Sherlock Holmes... Sherlock, the chap that chucked himself off the hospital. They could be a group of people. Look at the anonymous people. Who wear the Guy Fawkes mask because of the terrorist / freedom fighter from the 90s, V or whatever his name was, the one that tried to overthrow the House of Parliament. Maybe, possibly. I'm just saying. Again, we're going to conspiracy territory, but if you keep going back and back and back and back and back, we get to what I feel is actually the very, 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 very first person to ever use the name Sherlock Holmes in regards to detective work. Okay?
What was his name?
Sherlock Holmes. No, his full... Actually, no, to give his full name was actually William Sherlock Holmes.
Yeah, that's not as catchy.
It's not as catchy. Sherlock Holmes has that beat. Well, what about Arthur Sherlock Holmes? No, it's just a double barrel name, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's not working for me. So, yeah, what I'm trying to sort of say, Leslie, is that we've got a lot of men calling themselves Sherlock Holmes. We have this one man at the beginning. So, let's go back to this first Sherlock Holmes that started it all. Or possibly started it all, I should say. 1800s, a little bit fuzzy. Read through a few historian books to get here. But it's a bit like trying to work out whether the United Nations Intelligence Task Force happened. 70s, 80s, who knows?
Yeah.
But we do know that he was born on the 15th of June in 1857. William Sherlock Holmes was the second child of William Scott and Violet Holmes, the eldest Holmes child being Mycroft and the youngest Sherrinford. Not much is actually known about Sherrinford. It's almost as if he's actually been lost from the history books. However, Mycroft, we know, grew up to be a stubborn and private man whose name only actually became publicly associated with Sherlock Holmes because of one Arthur Conan Doyle. Leslie, pin, please.
Boing.
you.
I know who he is. Famous spiritualist.
Yeah, boy.
Yeah.
But do you know how he's connected to Sherlock Holmes, though?
No fucking idea. I just know that he was friends with Harry Houdini.
That's another episode right there. Harry Houdini and Arthur Conan Doyle. Okay, there likely could have been actually 2 more Holmes siblings, but letters of the day regarding Violet included euphemisms such as her most delicate state of health and 2 sad losses, all suggest that she very likely never carried them to full term. So that's quite sad. Interestingly enough, it should be noted that Violet's maiden name was Mycroft, a family who, like the Holmeses, were actually impoverished gentry, living out their days in the countryside. And I love this idea of impoverished gentry. Yeah, this idea of just like, I don't think it's really an Australian thing. It's very much a British thing.
Grey Gardens.
Yeah, exactly. It's Grey Gardens. It's these people that come from so much wealth and then lose that wealth and then just refuse to admit they've lost that wealth and carry on. Yeah, absolutely fantastic. There's they actually tried to do a reality TV series in the UK with a family who lived in a castle, and it didn't do very well because the selling point was a bit like like a posh version of the Osbournes. Didn't do very well, but I love the idea of impoverished gentry. It also feels like it should be an album title in some way.
We only have 2 servants. Don't tell anyone.
And I think also by her using the name Mycroft, like calling her son Mycroft, I think it's a way of just ensuring that her lineage never gets forgotten, which is kind of a sweet way. I don't think I could do it with my name. This is my son, Noonan. Now, growing up, Sherlock Holmes was, by all accounts, I'm going to call him Sherlock Holmes, so I'm not going to bother calling him William. I think we're only going to be talking about one Holmes for the rest of this now, so I think, we're all good. Tinfoil hats can be taken off for now. I think we're doing good. Now, Sherlock Holmes, by all accounts, was an intelligent but surly child. Letters from his father to his friends would describe the young Sherlock as plunging into deep bouts of depression, which would see him refusing to move or talk to anyone. Historians, or as they like to call themselves, Sherlockians.
Oh, fuck off!
Yeah. They actually get together. They have this is everywhere. It's in Australia. It's in America. It's in the UK. I discovered this. Thanks, Facebook, for depressing me. But they actually have these things. They're called Sherlockians. They like to research this particular version of Sherlock Holmes, for want of a better phrase, and you have to answer questions, and if you get the questions right about him, then you can be in your little gang.
I'll get you.
And some might say that I'm a little bit annoyed that I didn't get to be part of the group, and I'm not. I'm fine with it. I'm comfortable with where I am. I didn't want to be part of their stinking group.
Well, your problem is, when you answered the questions, you didn't start your answer by saying, well, actually. It sounds like it's one of those type
it does feel like one of those. It feels like one of those ones. If they ever made if they ever decided to do like a TV series or film of Sherlock's life, they just go, well, no, see here, we can't have women. That's how all people talk in my head. Anyone that's a Sherlockian. Anyway, according to them, the historians / Sherlockians, they've suggested that Holmes probably had an undiagnosed autism. Because, that's what we do. Well, I mean, you're agreeing with them. I'm a bit skeptical. Well, I'll give the evidence. They suggest he had an undiagnosed autism, and they point to his detachment from the everyday world, as well as the fixation on certain objects. True. In the British Library in London, there is a monograph attributed to this 1887 Holmes, which identifies 140 different varieties of pipe and cigarette ash that could be found at the time.
This sounds unbearable.
It sounds horrible. Why would you ever need that?
Jeez.
I mean,
did he have his fedora on when he wrote this? How did the other Sherlock get a deerstalker hat when his family heritage all his grandpas clearly wear fedoras?
Are you suggesting that this man's probably a misogynist of some kind?
It sounds like it.
He does, when you read it out, he does just sound like the 1800s version of the man. Mom, get in here! I've got 140 different kinds of cigarette ash. Yes, dear. But I mean, okay, Yes, fixation on items. I don't think it immediately goes ding, 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 autism.
Well, it's a spectrum.
Everything's a spectrum.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think maybe possibly. It's just got that feeling of someone's watched The Rain Man and then just gone, yeah, definitely. Yeah. Probably autistic.
Yeah.
Like high-fiving themselves as they're doing, like, woo, diagnose that guy. Like, I don't know. I mean, I just think it's very easy to just suddenly go, oh, they're insular. They're insular. They collect things, ergo they must be autistic. It's just a bit weird for me, personally. But,
Yeah. It's not a hill I want to die on. Let's move forward. It's okay. It can be. Might not be.
But it is true that Holmes was someone very much like his own company. When he wasn't cutting himself off from everybody, however, he was also a keen boxer, a lover of music, and a devoted actor. Oh, yeah, that's right. He was a triple threat. Oh, yeah. He'd be action movie status, I feel, in that one.
Or any of his one-man plays?
I'll get there.
Do they still survive? I'm assuming some titles such as The Problem with Women.
Let me tell you like it actually is. The seven steps to a better being. Oh, yeah, that's right. One of those ones.
Keep Burden White? No,
probably not that one. No. But yeah, he was obviously a clear lover of the arts, though, and violence in the arts. So much so that, in fact, upon arriving at this, so we're going to jump forward a little bit now to 1873, and he joined the Sydney Sussex College in Cambridge. Oh, that's right, Cambridge boy. Yeah, posho.
Yeah,
real posho. So really, this impoverished gentry, not that impoverished if they can get him into Cambridge. Just want to point that out.
It's white people poor.
It is white people. Sorry. He went there to study natural science. Obviously, being a boxer, a lover of arts and music, natural science. Why wouldn't you?
Are you sure his name is Sherlock?
Go on.
Because his name sounds a lot like Mary Sue to me. Just happens to be great at everything.
All right, Leslie, you're going to have to let The Force Awakens go. All right, just let it go, man.
Okay, Mary Sherlock. Ooh, that was a forced pun. I'm sorry.
But yeah, the reason why he did natural science was apparently was at the behest of his father, who wanted him to grow up to be a scientist, or at least involved in some way. Sherlock soon decided it wasn't for him. He wrote in the journal entry, "I was never a sociable fellow, always rather fond of moping in my rooms and working out my own little methods of thought, so I never mixed much with the men of my year." Ideas above his stations, that's what that sounds like to me. Thinks he's better than his colleagues. Shocking. I was a bit like that at uni, though, to be fair.
Yeah, same here.
Yeah, of course. You well knew. You thought you knew the world. Yeah, first year at uni, you're like, I know everything.
I'm still like that.
No surprise then, considering his ideas of every station, that he actually took himself out of Cambridge and within a year ran off to London to become an actor. And there he became pally with an actor called Henry Irving and set about this new career. Now, what's interesting here is his name doesn't actually appear on any posters at the time. So there's probably a likely reason for this. He was a terrible actor. No one wanted him on there. Or the other one is that he didn't actually have time to build up a career, because obviously when you're starting out, you're either in the background like a Roman shaking a spear, or you're one of the people stabbing Caesar. You're never going to be the guy that stands at the front going da 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 da. At the same time that he ran off to London, his brother Mycroft was living there. Mycroft, from what we can establish, was 27 years old and had a career in politics ahead of him. And it was a very good chance then that Sherlock was trying to keep a low profile to hope that Big Brother doesn't find out, literal Big Brother doesn't find out, and using pseudonyms. But he probably was a terrible actor.
I can name heaps of great autistic actors.
Go.
There you go. List done.
Anyway, the thing is, Mycroft seems to have little birdies everywhere floating around London, and soon word got back to him that his little brother was appearing in plays and not doing natural science like he was suggesting he was doing. So Mycroft actually dragged his brother kicking and screaming back to Cambridge, and then Sherlock stayed for about another year and then left, and actually just pulled himself out of the university without discussing with his parents. Just went, no, not happening, and ran off to London to start a career.
And you know, at one point he's probably said something like, "I know more than my professors."
Oh, Oh, God, yeah. Do you know what? It's kind of the equivalent of nowadays when people quit their jobs for like 2 or 3 years so their wife can support them even though they're only a teacher and they're just like, I'm going to be a famous writer.
Yeah.
Again, I'm not bitter about where my life is right now. So, yeah, he ran away to start a new career, but not as an actor, as a detective. Now, this is the... Yeah, I know. When you add it all together, it doesn't make much sense.
Not a real police detective that has to go to school.
No.
More of a made-up, hey, I'm a detective.
Yeah, I'm an online auctioneer now. Like, yeah, eBay's never been stronger than it is right now. You don't even know, okay? Yeah. It just does sound just like the sort of the posho. But this goes back to what I was saying before. The gentleman that chucked himself off the bathroom in the hospital, also a posho, sitting there in his house. It seems to be the go-to vocation. Got a lot of bit of money. Not really got an idea where you want to be. Can't be bothered going to police school.
If all these people were artistically inclined, they just would be artists. That's their problem.
Are we suggesting the art wasn't that good either?
If they were artistically inclined, Sherlock would be writing the blog. But because they seem across the line shit at the art, and and because they're fucking we're privileged generally, like I bet all these fucking pricks probably can only play the violin or something.
Yeah, God, man, you're so angry. Calm.
But you know that type.
Oh, of course we all know that type.
A fucking instrument no one likes. There are people, it's like, I'm really in the opera. It's like, well, fucking the opera has no use or purpose.
Or one of those people that really wants to tell you how much they like, how much drugs or alcohol they've been doing. Oh yeah, Thursday I've smoked like 3 bongs. It's a 3 bong problem. Oh, is it? Just the word. They're squatting, but really technically they own the house. That kind of thing.
Yeah. Okay, so he's a quote-unquote detective.
Fast forward 6 years. There is no more information about him. But to be fair, by this point, he was probably a boring sod.
Well, he's probably made so much money from being a detective. Probably. Retired.
So forward to 6 years later, and Sherlock was looking to live at a place called a flat called address 221B Baker Street.
If Sherlock was here, that's what he would do.
Yeah, with his violin.
Because that's obnoxious.
That's a violin. But look, the digs itself are fairly decent. There is a museum in London you can go to where they actually have set it out as a person would have at that time period when they're a bit well off and pretending to be a policeman. For him, though, couldn't afford it, apparently. Despite having money, he couldn't afford it. But luckily he had a friend called Stanford. First name unknown. Stanford introduced him to a doctor and former soldier, brace yourself, Leslie, John Watson.
But that's just a common British name. Your name's John.
Yes, so what of it?
Well,
John
are they
Watson
connected
Newman,
or
what's your point?
Well, is he connected to the other John Watson, or is it just a common name?
Can't find a connection. Don't think there is one. Can't be bothered going on Ancestry.com.
Yeah.
Quite honest with you, mate.
I think it's more weird that there's a bunch of people called Sherlock and no one's.
It's a bit sort of like, who was the killer of John Lennon? Mark Chapman.
Yep.
And if you actually look his life and compare it to that of Catcher in the Rye, there actually are comparisons where it's like, oh no, you are the same. Oh, that's weird, creepy. Anyway, John Watson was one of many men who was chewed up and spat out by the war.
Yeah,
he was another soldier, like the early one, and there's a good chance actually that Stanford probably took pity on him because in those days there would have been no sense of what post-traumatic stress was or any sort of aftercare.
Not even shell-shocked.
Shell-shocked, yeah. There was no actual aftercare for soldiers in that time period. Pretty much like America now. Politics.
Hey. Stop blowing that trumpet.
But also, equally, he could have also been worrying about his other friend, Sherlock, who was, as we've already discussed, is a man that was very self-centered, kept himself to himself, and was happy to do things on a whim. Because let's be honest about this, leaving university, wanting to be an actor, and then suddenly going, actually, no, detective. So, I think
was he like, do you want to play detective with my friend? He's like, well...
Are you suggesting it was a play date?
Well, if like the other Watson, he's dealing with stress and fallout from the war, maybe it's like, maybe I do want to play detective.
I can do that. That'd be fun.
Yeah. And getting to the point, how do we know, like, any of this is true? Like, they could be... Dude could be a bit mentally ill. John could be a bit mentally ill. Sherlock, could be a bit autistic. This just could have been elaborate LARPing.
LARPing. Okay, 1800s LARPing.
Well, more so the later. I don't know. But you know what I'm saying? Like,
no, I know what you're saying.
Neither seem to have a firm grip in reality.
No. I think there's a lot of fanciful sort of going out there. On the outside looking in, it does seem like a lot of running around and playing around. But just keep going. So Sherlock by now had made himself as a consulting detective, and he was offering support to the Metropolitan Police.
You have to be just a huge fucking cunt just to go, hey, that's a job.
C-bomb.
But you know what?
Yeah, no, well, yeah, because when you make up your job... And
hey, do you want a real policeman?
No, I'm the world's first consulting detective.
What's your qualifications? I've been in a few plays, a boxer, been in a few plays, and I dropped out of university.
My daddy's rich. My daddy owns a Porsche.
No, I'm fake rich.
I'm one of the impoverished gentry. Oh, no, you only have 4 houses. I know!
You've got the case.
So he was apparently working for the Metropolitan Police, often for free.
What the fuck is this?
Which proves, again, I think goes back to what you were saying before, definitely a rich boy just trying to be... Yeah. You know what I mean?
And were they like, holy, this guy doesn't fucking leave us alone? Like, do you think they were like, let's pretend to give him a case because it's going to be less stress and less effort on our part than him coming in here every day going, wait, Governor, you got a case? I hear Spring Hill Jack's on the loose again. Are you after the Ripper?
Centered. Soon after moving in with Sherlock, Watson soon discovered that what he did for a living, in the speech marks thing there. Watson wrote in his diary about how much the man fascinated him. He describes his new flatmate as being able to make deductions about a person, including their character and where they travel from, simply through nothing more than the stains on the man's shoes. But if that's true, then basically he's discovered forensics. And this is the 1800s, which is kind of cool, which is kind of the idea of logically putting something together. Yeah. You've got a splash of mud on your shoe. There's red mud. I know there was some building going on in my house a mile down the road. Ergo, you must have had to walk past there. Or I know you got a cab because there's horse dung on your shoe. That's pretty... That's kind of cool. I kind of like that. That's true. So discovering forensics before there was CSI, from intents and purposes, a decade or two before it was actually being used as evidence in court as well, which I think is really, 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 really fascinating. But apparently, despite his apparent intelligence, the man refused to learn basic things. There's a surprise. Such as the fact that the Earth revolved around the sun, or even who the Prime Minister was at any one time.
I hate this guy.
Compared to Paulie, better or worse?
Well...
He's not throwing a turkey out the window yet.
It's different. Emotionally, the only character I've liked this entire episode is John Watson.
Just seems like a man. Because he's a good man. He's a good man. To Holmes, apparently, these were trivial matters that, unless they helped him solve a case, they were utterly useless facts.
Yeah, he's got a point.
But you imagine trying to keep up with Prime Ministers in Australia? That'd be even harder. Yeah. But so enamored was Watson with Holmes, and being a bit of a budding writer, he actually wrote up one of his cases, what he called The Study in Scarlet, which was published in 1887 in Beaton's Christmas Annual.
Oh.
And what says Christmas more, Leslie, than a tale of a murderous cabbie forcing Mormons to poison themselves after they defiled and destroyed his wife?
Yeah, nice.
Ho, ho, ho. Yeah? Merry Christmas. It's
Father Christmas coming this year. Not to Mormons.
Not to Mormons.
They're all dead.
Poisoned by an evil cabbie. It's as festive as Tinsel and Nakatomi Plaza. It really is. But it made quite a big splash. And it did bring Watson in touch with Arthur Conan Doyle.
Yeah.
Born in 1859 in Edinburgh, Scotland, Doyle was, like Watson, a medical doctor who, by 1886, had kind of just sort of stumbled into writing and publishing. He would go on to be Watson's agent and publisher. However, it seems I think Doyle was a bit of a shit to Watson. Because if you dig up any of these copies of works that Watson's written with regards to his friend and, let's be honest, layabout Sherlock Holmes, they're all emblazoned with Doyle's name, not Watson's. So I feel like someone did not read their contract.
Jeez, so
now you hate Doyle. I'm giving you no nice characters. No nice characters at all. I'm sorry, man. This is yeah.
But I like out of all these people who want to be creative, the only one who has any artistic merit is a soldier.
Yeah,
Doctor.
a soldier that probably sleeps, gets to sleep at night, rocking himself back and forth and just going, "They're coming to get me. They're coming to get me."
Yeah.
You know? Jeez. Doyle's name nowadays is emblazoned on. We can only assume that Watson's was on there for a bit. Whilst this appears to have happened later on, sort of after Watson gave up writing, the signs are that Doyle was a bit shifty from the start. For example, when they so the Studying Scarlet was published in installments in the Christmas Annual, and then Doyle decided to republish it as an actual novel, like those people that have like ebooks and they do they e-publish. Wankers. Doyle went against the wishes of Watson, who wanted to have a particular artist draw images of him and Sherlock Holmes, solving crimes, romping through the woods and whatever, and use his father to illustrate the books, Charles Altamont Doyle.
Yeah, that's a good name.
That's a good name. Isn't it?
Yeah,
that's a name that's going to drop trousers. I like that name. He was asked to provide 6 illustrations, and indeed, nepotism runs rife. These illustrations, however, were publicly decried, and was said to make Holmes look like a dozy-looking figure, only a few stages beyond a childishly drawn stickman who sported a straggling beard. In my head, all I'm actually literally am picturing is just a crayon. Just like a crayon picture of a stickman with an arrow that says, "Sherlock, murder victim, me, Watson," drawn by Altamont Doyle, aged 45 3/4. But yeah, no, apparently so Holmes, a man who was never even-tempered, was outraged. He had met Watson's publishing dreams of indifference, but the illustrations were a huge deal breaker for him, and Holmes stopped talking to Doyle instantly. Just had nothing to do with it. It was just always Watson and Doyle to the very end. Still, Watson continued to write and Doyle continued to publish. At the end of the day, Leslie, got to make the money, got to make it rain.
Well, when you're constantly working for free.
Yeah, that's got to hurt, hasn't it? Holmes, I've got my half of the rent here. Have you got your half? Oh, I've solved the murder of a duchess. Oh, good, so you've got the money then. Oh, the solving of the crime is the reward itself, Watson, don't you understand? Yeah, right, whatever, mate.
Fucking imagine when that landlady be like, "Oh, Jesus." She's a long-suffering woman.
I'll get to her.
Okay, good. Living with 2 bachelors.
In those days.
Weren't you boys married?
I actually knew someone who had a housemaid.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, generally, back in the 70s, he went to university, and I mentioned how Watson and Sherlock seemed like a very strange thing to him recently. He goes, "Oh, no, I had one the same." I said, "What?" He goes, "Oh, yeah, someone that would just come and feed me sandwiches when I needed sandwiches." I'm like, "Sorry, what?" He's like, "That's what you did." I was like, "We went to very different universities, you and I." Anyway, going back to something you said before about the truth of the stories, we do have to take all...
I believe none of this. Well, just because everyone's fucking douches.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because there's no douches nowadays, man. Yeah. We have to take all these tales with a heavy dose of salt. Watson was likely an unreliable narrator, one who wanted to big up his friend's talents.
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah, and in the pursuit of narrative flow, he'd even forget which part of him was injured in the Afghanistan war. In some stories, it's his arm, in others, it's his legs. Fine, you can make a few mistakes. It happens, yeah. But it also shows a distinct a lack of care on Doyle's part, who was the editor and letting these things slip through.
Well, it's also like his personal injuries aren't anyone else's information but his own.
Yeah, of
like
course.
Both could be injured, and maybe he's just at one point.
No, exactly.
It's he's talking about his arms injured, his shoulders relevant. At other points, talking about his leg being injured is relevant.
Exactly.
He might have been private and proud about it.
Yeah, exactly. And at the end of the day, let's go back to what we keep banging on about trauma.
Yeah.
One day, as you said, it could be his arms really hurting, and that's the thing he focuses on while writing. And the next day, it's like, oh no, my leg's really hurting. Oh, it's my leg that's injured. I mean, look, he mentions a dog in the Study in Scarlet, never mentions that dog again. Sherlockians.
Well, how many mysteries has the dog solved?
Yeah, exactly, none.
Sherlock is like, what's the dog's name again? It's not relevant to solving cases. Dog,
is it a cat, a hamster? I don't care.
Feeding the dog isn't relevant to solving mysteries.
But he also labelled these cases. These cases were fantastically popular and being published in Strand magazine. Cases like The Crooked Man, the aforementioned Study in Scarlet, and The Case of the Yellow Face.
Ooh, that's racist.
It sounds racist, but it's not as bad as it is. Quick summary. A man, mistrusting his wife, follows her to a house every day and sees a garish, emotionless yellow face staring out the window of said house. Holmes deduced that the face was a mask, and it soon came to light that the man's wife was once in a relationship with a person of colour in America. They had a child, and after he passed away, the child was brought to England and made to wear a mask to hide her obvious mixed heritage. There is a happy ending, though, Leslie.
Yeah.
To give credit to Holmes's client, he was actually ecstatic about having an instant child and raised her as his own.
Aww.
Which is very sweet. Title, though, Yellowface.
No, it turns out we're racist.
Yeah.
Assuming that they would be.
Yeah, exactly.
We should yell at each other. That will change our point of views. Stop being racist, John.
That's just shout. I'll be doing it. And obviously, around about this time, there's also Jack the Ripper. Yeah. Now, Watson himself never actually wrote about Holmes's interest in Jack the Ripper, probably because he found it too hard. But some people do suggest that there are some different accounts if you look, depending on the Sherlockians. It's a horrible word. So some have said that he actually solved the crimes and connected them to a member of the royal family.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, very nice. Another one said that he was actually he connected to a fellow police officer, and then one even said that he was the killer himself. Sure, Jan. Sure. So one of those three. But yeah, Watson himself never mentioned it, and I actually think it's probably because Holmes was never involved in it, full stop. I mean, you'd think he'd mention it if he was that good.
Yeah. And I'm assuming member of the royal family is Prince Philip.
Yes, he's that old.
Yeah.
Never trust them. But the biggest rumour to circulate by the end of the 1800s was much bigger than a royal family member being a murderer. Possible. Allegedly. Rumours began running around after a long disappearance that Holmes was actually dead. And how did people know that Holmes was dead? Because of Mrs. Hudson, their housekeeper, who was a gossip and a tattletale.
Okay, I love her already.
She would apparently happily let anybody know who would listen that Sherlock and Watson, who by now was married and living with a woman he'd met in a case involving a pygmy.
Well, that's why should I laugh? He's happy.
It's fine. Had departed without warning, and I love this idea that she's just been sat there, just someone
feeding their dog.
Someone asked me, "Morning, Mrs. Hudson. Oh, they've gone off here too, have they? Yeah, very good. Yeah, but, go and ask me where they are. I don't want to ask you. You know, you want some more milk? Oh, guess what? Anyway, eventually Watson did return and published a article which he called "The Final Problem." In which he detailed that Holmes's obsession with things had led him to pursuing a mathematician by the name of James Moriarty, that well-known Italian name, believing him to be the centre of a crime syndicate which branched out across London and beyond. Yeah. Now, if you look up Professor James Moriarty in the 1800s, he's a mathematician who just wrote a very, very long, boring book about meteorites. It's over 800 pages long. It has no illustrations, no figures, and the margins are what's the average margin? About a centimetre around a page when you're reading a book? His are about 2 or 3 millimetres around the page. It is a dense text.
All these people are fucking unbearable.
Leslie would know. You wouldn't really track with left with any of them.
Fucking they deserve each other. Hey, do you want to talk about meteorites? Only if I can tell you about 100 different versions of ash.
Did I tell you that Sherlock and Watson have left? Yes, Mrs. Hudson, not now. Holmes had claimed to apparently stop many of his crimes happening before they'd even started.
Of course he did.
Yeah, okay, there you go. Yeah. And as a result, Moriarty put a price on his head. Holmes also claimed that Moriarty appeared at 221B Baker Street, doing nothing more than warning the gentleman detective to mind his own beeswax. Holmes would not, and, according to Watson, he lured Moriarty out of hiding, leading him on a chase across Europe, which would end at the Rackenbach Falls. As Watson tells it, he never left his friend's side for the whole trip until his medical skills were called for at the hotel they were staying at whilst on a walk to the aforementioned falls. Holmes continued his walk whilst Watson returned to the hotel only to discover he'd been tricked and rushed back to the Rackenbach Falls, where he found a letter from Holmes suggesting that he and Moriarty were to fight to the death.
Yeah, nice.
There was no Moriarty, there was no Holmes. All that remained, aside from the letter, were footprints that suggest the two men had fallen to their death.
They reckon back fell.
Hey! Watson returned home a broken man. His wife, Mary, died sometime after.
Oh! That's rough.
That's right, isn't it? Your mate's dead, your wife's dead, you've got no dog, Mrs. Hudson's still going on. So the rent's due. I'm not giving up on the rent.
You can go back to having PSD.
You can go back to having PSD. And he never picked up the pen again, which is probably why his stories faded into obscurity. However, the public is not one for death to get in the way of a good story. And if you hear it from Doyle, the public's campaigning for more Holmes led to him contacting his editor, saying he was returning to Holmes as a dog returns to his vomit.
Yeah.
Which I think was part of sort of Doyle's pretense that he didn't want to do it. Like, I can't do it. Because I think secretly he was probably shitting himself. The fact that Watson doesn't want to do this anymore. Watson doesn't want to talk about it anymore. Yeah, and it's like, well, where the hell am I going to pull these stories out of? My arse?
Yeah.
Yes, Leslie, out of his arse. Doyle would continue this facade of not wanting to write more Holmes for years to come. There's a great story of a playwright who wrote a play about Sherlock Holmes and who wrote to Doyle and said, I'd like to have him married off at the end. Would that be okay with you? To which Doyle simply sent a one-sentence letter saying, do with him what you will. Like, just not interested. And this is all this pretense, I think. It's this idea of the struggle. Again, it's like Sherlock himself, the struggling artist. But, you know. Whereas at least Doyle completed his education, became a doctor, to be fair.
Probably the only person who's made money off any of this shit.
Doyle could never get the truth out of Watson, and with Watson refusing to write anymore, Doyle took it upon himself to write more tales. He brought Holmes back in a tale called The Empty House, which saw Holmes coming back to solve an assassination by Captain Moran. In the story, Holmes, the fictional Holmes now, tells Watson how he managed to survive falling off a fucking waterfall. And it's... All right, I'm going to do it for you now. Ready? Okay. My note to you was absolutely genuine. I had little doubt that I had come to the end of my career when I perceived the somewhat sinister figure of the late Professor Moriarty standing upon the narrow pathway which led to safety. I read a purpose in his grey eyes, I exchanged some remarks of him, therefore, and obtained his courteous permission to write the short note which you received afterwards. I'm going to kill you, but please take time to write a letter.
Yeah.
I left it in my cigarette box and my stick, and I walked along the pathway, Moriarty still at my heels. When I reached the end, I stood at bay. He drew no weapon, but he rushed at me and threw his long arms around me. He knew that his own game was up and was only anxious to revenge upon himself upon me. We tottered together upon the brink of the fall. I have some knowledge, however, of Baritsu, the Japanese system of wrestling.
Oh, just hurry up and fuck already. Just too busy totting each other.
I slipped through his grip and he let out a horrible scream, kicked madly for a few seconds and clawed the air with both his hands. But for all his efforts he could not get his balance and over he went. With my face over the brink, I saw him fall for a long way. Then he stuck... This always makes me laugh. Then he struck a rock, bounded off and splashed into the water. Boom, boom. Boom. So the bit in The Simpsons where Homer falls off the cliff.
Yeah.
Boom, 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 boom. So there you go. It sounds like something out of an action film and completely contrasts greatly with Watson's other tales. Japanese wrestling, the writing of the letter to allow him to do it. All very silly, very fanciful. And it didn't stop there. Doyle's first story after Holmes's death was The Hound of the Baskervilles, in which a man is chased by a dog which glows in the dark.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah, and in which another man pretends his sister is his own wife. Ew.
Yeah.
Basically, ew. There's nothing. Ew.
Well,
ew.
You guys have a long history of that, so.
Well, all right. Just
don't be judgy.
Don't throw stones in glass houses.
Yeah. Have to keep that bloodline pure.
In The Adventure of the Devil's Foot, Watson and Holmes have to trip balls just in their quest to solve a case, which seems to kind of fit in with Doyle's spiritualism. You know, this sort of like, looking for...
do you think you're a case of now he has to write the books? It's like, what happens if Sherlock Holmes was me?
Yes.
Maybe a little bit more. Maybe you want to do some drugs. Is he friends with an illusionist? Is there a character called Mary Mumimi?
There is a story which possibly is fiction, but it's wonderful, where Sherlock Holmes does hang out with Harry Houdini. It's very strange. And then finally, there's The Adventure of the Creeping Man, possibly one of the most dumbest tales in Doyle's canon.
He's really out of ammo at this point.
The Adventure of the Creeping Man. Which sees a notable professor taking on the personality of an ape because of some drugs that he snorts. Yeah, and as I say, it kind of highlights how Doyle's own spiritualism comes into play in later years, as well as him not really seeming to care what he wrote as long as he got paid. So, He also tried to set up with a relationship with a gentleman by the name of Professor Challenger and attempted to emulate the same symbiotic relationship he once had with Watson. This quickly died when Challenger was angered by Doyle, taking his diaries of traveling through the jungles of Africa and turned them into a story about dinosaurs, which he called The Lost World. He's just running out of ideas. He's just, I put this in, and as you said it, and I made this here. Everyone's lives became his little playthings. And by the end, Doyle would tell anyone that listened that Holmes was indeed fictional, and he based the entire character on his former university teacher, Joseph Bell.
You know what? The prequels were always planned.
Yes!
Star Wars was always the fourth installment.
Fuck, Doyle was George Lucas.
And I'm just going to go back and I'm going to improve on A New Hope, and I'm just going to fill it with 90s CGI. So when you watch it in the year 2018, you'll get pulled out of the film. Because all the special effects from the 70s will still hold up, and all that 90s shit will just look terrible.
You're so angry.
He treads on Jabba's tail. Yeah, it sounds pretty fucking lame towards the end.
Yeah, it was. It was pretty lame, and that's pretty much how Sherlock died. But the thing is, did he, Leslie? Because guess what? No, because guess what? Because after Holmes' death, there are letters and sightings of him in as far off places as Tibet. The historian Nick Benison suggests that with Moriarty hot on Holmes' tail, Mycroft used his connections in the government to make his brother disappear. Out of sight, out of mind. And also, it's hard to solve crimes if everyone knows who you are, and even harder to get clients when your cases, i.e. your private affairs, are being published. So there is a very good chance that Holmes had to disappear in order that he could carry on. And if we fast forward to the First World War, when a German agent by the name of von Bork was arrested for spying, a transcription made by the people involved, an undercover spy and his partner, contains the following conversational text. Good old Watson, you are the one fixed point in a changing age. There's an east wind coming all the same. Such a wind has never blew on England yet. Sure, Watson could be a code name, but the speaker is written as being Sherlock Holmes. Pretty good work for a man who flew off a cliff. Look, indeed, in the 1950s, a Sussex housekeeper claimed that she and her son looked after a man called Sherlock Holmes back in the late 40s, who would look after bees and write out his memoirs. He was known to meditate inside a circle of small stones, which he said he learned from a Japanese businessman and would help him to remember the people he'd lost in his life. And I kind of want that to be true, because that's kind of cute.
I like that one.
I like that one. That's a nice ending.
That version doesn't sound like a complete dick.
That sounds like a man that's mellowed out, doesn't it? Like, all right, you know what? Maybe I'll just stop running away, just sort of accept it. It would have meant he would have been about 90 in the 40s, though, so he would have been fucking old. Yeah. So he still could have been the guy that was letting himself... Because if that's the case, that means he was the guy that was getting drip-dried. Imagine this 80-year-old man going, come on then! Drain me of blood then! So what am I getting at, basically, Leslie? What I'm trying to say is... Is it conceivable that whilst Holmes the man may have died of old age, that possibly, maybe, there is this sort of lineage going on, whether it is a family of Holmeses or Sherlock Holmeses, or is it some sort of kind of badge of honor, is what I'm trying... I love the word, again, going back to what you said before, the brand. Yeah. I mean, what if, we saw here, what if the assessment public eye was stopping this Holmes from the 1800s from solving crimes? So luckily he had a brother who could bump him off in speech marks, and he could just carry on what we're doing. What if Arthur Sherlock-Holmes wasn't an idiot, did actually fake his own death again so he could do the same thing? What if this is what's happening?
Well, my only problem is, particularly with the recent one from 2010, it's just too circular. It's like, it's too much of a conceit to think that there's another Sherlock who happens to meet a guy called John, who happens to know a guy called Moriarty. Like, I think that later one, in all reality, would have been it's an ARG, an interactive internet game. And people are throwing pieces out. And us doing this podcast about it is exactly what they want. It's a case of this man solved mysteries, was artistically inclined, couldn't be artistic, getting stories written about him, so art reflecting life, then became a myth, became a legend, and then people using art to make life that circled back on itself, if you get me. Like, the 2010, that's all bullshit. That is all performance art, which was my original thought when I saw the video. No, I'm calling bullshit and all of that.
So, yeah, well,
It's an ARG.
It's an ARG. Well, Leslie, I'd like to think, if I may take the counterpoint,
Yeah.
I do kind of like the idea, maybe possibly, maybe tiny possibly, that would it be nice to think, though, that there's someone just going around possibly solving crimes?
Oh, if he wasn't so fucking unbearable, yeah. Like...
There's that guy that's been solving crimes. There's that town in New Jersey where that guy's been solving crimes like 75 years or something. What's wrong with that? But that is the sorry tale of Sherlock Holmes, and I think we should let the listeners decide. I personally believe that there could be a lovely... I like the idea of an underground lineage. It's not the... What's that phrase that police officer once said? He's not the hero we deserve, but he's the hero we need, As a person, he can be corrupted. As a symbol, he can go on forever. Or you could just be a computer game and someone's just dick around with everyone like Banksy.
Yeah, probably. Maybe it is Banksy.
Oh, it's Banksy! Leslie, what have we got up next?
Well, I don't know if we're going to do it next month or the month after, because I'm going to South Korea next month. But it's a common kind of theme. We're looking at a intelligent, white, academic man.
Is it me?
No.
Okay.
It was a North American university lecturer who got himself in a bit of bother and basically broke a child slavery ring in India.
Is it Sherlock Holmes?
No, it's Dr. Henry Jones, India's white savior. His white savior. His white savior. His white